Welcome to Mindcast, brought to you by Stryve. We talk to experts from all walks of life and discover their secrets that will allow you to unlock your potential and live the successful, fulfilled life that we all strive for. Our guest today is a Northwestern and Kellogg School of Management graduate, a writer, a leadership coach, a speaker, and a self-proclaimed multi-potentialite, having experienced positions in large banks like Merrill Lynch to small startup companies focused on bringing cheaper Asian delivery food to urban populations. He is a two-time startup founder, two-time author, and corporate refugee turned trailblazer for positive change, optimism, and the belief that our daily actions can help us all overcome stress and anxiety. He has worked with corporate executives at Google, Amazon, the Professional Bowling Association, and various startup companies on behavioral leadership change. He has spoken on hundreds of podcasts, in libraries, at conferences, and in high schools around the country. On top of all of that, he's a top contributing writer on LinkedIn and Medium in the areas of leadership, self-improvement, inspiration, and personal development. Please welcome our guest today, Jordan Gross. On this week's podcast, we talk about the limitations that corporate life places on chasing your dreams, the idea of having a side gig around your full-time job, and why we should proactively focus on something we love doing every day. First and foremost, welcome to Mindcast. It's great to actually have you on here. I thought for our viewers, why don't you give us an insight in terms of what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's the cliche entrepreneurial answer, but every day is totally different. But to get a sense of who I am right now and what I do right now. So on a day like yesterday, woke up around 5:30 a.m., practiced my morning routine, which I'm sure we'll get a little bit more into. Headed to the gym near me where I'm a personal trainer for 5 or 6 people in the morning, from 6 a.m. until about 8 a.m.
How long have you been doing that for?
I've been doing that for a year.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah. After that, I head to the local Starbucks where I spend most of the rest of my day. I like to start the day out with writing on the nonfiction side, so I'll do an article in order to continue growing my platform on LinkedIn and Medium, and do some work in growing my email list. I'll do that in the middle of the day. I do coaching related items. I'm a one-on-one leadership coach where I work with young startup founders, mid-level managers, and sports captains on behavioral leadership change. And then after that, what I'm doing right now, that's a change from maybe 3 weeks ago to a month ago, is I'm actually doing a lot of research on going back to school. So, having written this book about overcoming stress and anxiety, and then doing one-on-one coaching with people in regard to behavior change, I've realized that my interests and my background, and what I want to continue doing is really related to the field of psychology. So right now I'm contacting a lot of psychology students, getting them on the phone, getting admissions departments on the phone, understanding the PhD versus PsyD versus master's process, and figuring out what I have to do in order to explore that route on the academic side.
Okay.
That's like my middle of the day, and then after having a full day of experiences, interacting with people, talking with people, go to the gym, take a walk through New York City. I do my fiction writing. So I love to write fiction after having really experienced a full day. So I can really maybe embellish on some of the ideas that I had throughout the day, or some of the experiences I've had with certain people, and present them in my own fashion in the fiction book that I'm currently writing. So that takes me to like 6 p.m. or so, and then after that, maybe a couple more calls or emails, and then I like to wind down, watch some sports, a little TV at night, and that pretty much rounds out the day.
Nice, relaxing finish to the day.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of go a bit deeper into what you said about coaching and mentoring some of the startup founders.
Mhm.
Now, I guess as a startup founder myself, you
Yeah.
realize that having a mentor, having somebody to kind of
create that level-headedness and allow you to kind of see from a third or an external perspective on how you're dealing with clients, with colleagues, with business practices. It's quite valuable because it's very easy to kind of get lost in that cycle of business, business, business.
Yes.
And how do you find dealing with founders of companies? I think we've touched upon this in the past when we've spoken about
Yeah.
there's always this element of an ego when you're starting your own company. It's your baby, I guess. You
Yeah.
feel like you know quite a lot. You feel like you know best, and you're the most experienced. How do you break the news to people? How do you find out what they need to work on while they're running a startup?
Yeah. So in the coaching that I do, it's one on one with the leader, and it's called stakeholder centered coaching. And what that means is what we're the one behavior that we're working on, all of the feedback that we're getting is from the stakeholders that this leader chooses. So basically, well, I'll talk with a leader, and they may want to think that they are supposed to be working on one thing, but then they'll tell me the five closest people to them who can provide me with accurate feedback about their leadership qualities. I basically just ask them, what are this person's strengths, what are this person's weaknesses, what have they been doing well up to now, and what can they be doing better in the future. Simple questions that turn into these long-winded conversations where it's kind of cool, where the employees get to talk about their leader behind their back in an anonymous and obviously productive way. Um, but after that, I gather this report, I create it, and I give it over to the leader. And based on that anonymous feedback, we choose what we're going to work on moving forward. So, in regard to the humility it takes a very humble leader to say, okay, I want to work on my leadership and I want to use the people who I lead in order to help me get better at that. I don't want to just use books. I don't want to just use my coach as the only resource. I want to use the direct feedback from the people who I am leading every single minute of every single day in order to allow me to get better. That gives them some stake in the game, and that gives me more of an idea of whether or not my leadership is actually measurably effective.
I think I completely agree. I think for a leader to kind of have that sense of humility, to be able to take a step back and say, "Look, I'm willing to accept help. I need to work on these things." That's kind of the first step to improving yourself as an individual in all aspects of life. And I think while an employee would love to kind of talk a bit of trash about their I guess their boss in the kind of traditional sense of
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
I think everyone can kind of benefit from that. Actually, tapping into what people around you see of you, because
Yeah.
sometimes we can be blinded by our own actions. It's very difficult to spot what we're doing and be self-aware to that extent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, it comes down to the fact that um you're so often told to not care about what other people think, right?
Yeah.
But when you're a leader who's in charge of really the daily lives of certain people, you have to care what they think because it's their lives that you're affecting.
You're responsible for them to an extent,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, I think that's why it's so important to be able to exactly what you said in terms of we've been told many, many times, oh, forget about what people think. But I think that saying has been kind of taken out of context to the point where it's like, oh, who cares how I impact other people? But that's not
Right.
really the basis behind it. It's more have self confidence and belief in who you are as a person and what you do. That's what I take from don't care about what people think, not oh, who cares what you say and how it impacts other people or what you do and how it affects other people. Because as human beings, we have a duty to be compassionate for one another and try to help improve the human race as a whole.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
So in terms of other things kind of that you've written about a lot, and you kind
Sure.
of talk about the concept of like leaving the corporate life, right? So you yourself are what we would perfectly class as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
You've had ventures in your past, and I think you've written about a couple of failed ventures you've had, as well as what you're working on now.
Yeah.
What is your take on the corporate world today, and how it's kind of well, would you say it's kind of clouded people's judgment of what their dreams might be and how they can pursue them?
Yeah, that's quite a loaded question. So my first, it's important to note that my experience with the corporate world comes from the standard internships when I was in college, and then I was in a leadership and management program with a big restaurant group in New York City. So that is the extent of my experiences. So I can't speak to necessarily the realm of engagement that other people have had, but from what I understand and did understand when I was working there was, um, it doesn't seem like the corporate world is aimed at giving you something else, providing you with a side gig, saying this is your life right here, but we also wish for you to grow and develop yourself on the side. And I'm not saying that that is a bad thing. Obviously, you're there to do a job, and in order to be best at that job, you need to be pretty focused on it. But I would say that there is, for me, there's not necessarily a component of this is your job, but you're going to get better at this job by working on something else as well, something that drives you, something that allows you to continue learning, something that allows you to think in a different way or act in a different way. I think the more we see companies allow people to really explore that additional thought patterns that they can have, I think those are the companies that are going to really engage, and get their employees fully immersed in their missions.
I think, yeah, I have to completely agree. I think traditional business, large corporates have all been, I would say, transactional in how they deal with their employees. It's more of a input kind of output thing, and I guess employees are treated like a mechanism in the entire structure to kind of make things work. Everyone has their individual cog. Now, what ends up happening is we don't focus on that individual person and how they can develop and become the best version of themselves. How can they benefit from the job? It's more, how can the company benefit from hiring this person?
Right.
And you tend to see a lot more startups and forward thinking corporates who tend to focus more on self development and provide employees with many other, I would say, services that can help them develop as a person. There's a lot more focus on happiness. There's a lot more focus on free time. Even things like providing meals, offering them transport around campuses, etc., etc. There's a much bigger focus on trying to help develop the individual person, and I think that's kind of the way things need to go. What's your take on, like? There's a lot of talk around the gig economy, so like freelancing, how kind of the I would say the career paths of most people are going to go down that as kind of automation takes over, as companies need to be much more agile and employees they have to have a wider set of skills and be more rounded as an individual. What's your take on that, becoming self-employed in that sense and stepping away from the corporate world, not as a, I would say, an entrepreneur, but more as a self-employed freelancer?
Yeah. So my true dream for other people. So everything I do, I want other people to lead their best lives. I think that's a pretty obvious goal of mine in my life. In terms of work and career, I think every single person should have some sort of side gig. I truly do. I think that just sticking to the monotony and routine of the day to day work life can become toxic. So having a side project that you can call your own, that you could take full ownership of, um, it allows for two things. One, there's that external drive to do something that you love and enjoy, and two, God forbid, given the, I don't know, the automation of the job that you're currently in, or an unfortunate financial situation at the job that you're currently in, it gives you with another set of skills, another experience where you understand and learn how to make money, how to grow a business on the side, so that you have a sort of safety net.
Okay, and do you have a personal experience that's kind of made you realize this?
Yeah. So for me, I had startups in college. And then I went over to the corporate world. So I actually didn't have anything going on when I was at my corporate job, because I thought I should be fully invested in what I was doing. but all that did was made me sort of dislike my job more, because that was all I could think about. It totally consumed me. I ate, drank, and breathed my position at this restaurant group. Whereas I sort of let go of a lot of the things that I was doing on the side. A lot of exercise I stopped doing, a lot of writing I stopped doing, a lot of reading I stopped doing. All these passive activities I was no longer doing because I thought, 90% of my waking hours should be based on work. So yeah, I would say that in not taking my own advice, I learned that that's pretty much a miserable way to approach a position. There has to be something on the side that you can look forward to, that allows you to think in a different way.
I think it goes back to kind of taking the initiative to go beyond what is the normal path in life. I guess how kind of society has become is there's a very standard route to I would say quote unquote success, which is you go to school, you try and get into a college or university, and if you don't go into that, you go into like an apprenticeship, and you end up in the corporate world.
Mhm.
And kind of as long as you stick to what you're meant to do on your daily tasks, you'll be fine and you'll succeed in life. And life becomes very monotonous. You let life kind of take control of you as opposed to you taking control of life.
Right.
I think, like what you said, it becomes everything becomes very stale very quickly unless you're trying to challenge yourself, unless you're doing something that you're passionate about. And sometimes, unfortunately, you can easily be in a situation where financially, in order to support yourself the way the world is today, to an extent, you need money for survival needs.
Right.
And sometimes you have to take a job that you don't enjoy doing. But it doesn't mean that you can't really go out and find things around that job, around those hours where you can really put your passion into, where you can seek fulfillment and happiness.
Right. Yeah.
So so you've been to university,
Mhm.
and you've kind of been able to tap into how the standard student kind of thinks about life in general.
Mhm.
What's your take on how kind of university students take their career paths, their life choices? How do you feel they make their decisions in terms of what they want to do for their future?
Yeah. So I was listening to Michelle Obama and Oprah chat the other day, and Michelle Obama said that her life up until she met Barack Obama was about checking boxes. So she went to high school, she got great grades. She got into a great college, she got great grades again. She got into a great law school, she got great grades again. And she got into the best law firm she could get. She started making a lot of money. All the while, she was not enjoying virtually any of it. She said she said that she strongly disliked being a lawyer, but she did it because she was checking boxes.
It's
So
kind
I
of like we grow vertically as opposed to horizontally. We could just keep going deeper and deeper into what we already know. We don't explore other paths as much and grow a larger foundation of our knowledge base and things we enjoy.
right. So until she met Barack Obama, who knows where she would be right now? Maybe she'd be a partner at that law firm. Maybe she'd be at a bigger and better law firm. She was at number like two. Maybe she'd be at number one. Who knows? But had she not met this man who was, like you just mentioned, going horizontal from one experience to the other, sort of like he did, what? And then he became what? She never would have become the woman that we all know and love today. Um, so for me, so for me, I think that's sort of the common approach. I do think that people are starting to do a much better job as the word entrepreneur becomes so much more of a buzzword, and there are these big time influencers who are telling millennials to explore their entrepreneurial bugs in their 20s while they don't have the responsibility that people have later on in life. So I would say that there's a nice motivational push in getting people out there, getting people to explore the untraveled path. But I'd say for most people, especially coming from Northwestern University in Chicago, and a very tight knit group of people from, New York, San Francisco, the Chicago area, LA. Um, Pretty much everybody I know went into their, a pretty standard 9 to 5 plus job, either in investment banking, consulting, or went to law school. People are coming back to business school now, so that they can say, hey, I did this thing, and then I went to the next job where I had to do the last job if I wanted to get the next job. Then I went to school. Then I came out of that. I had an internship. I came out of that. I got to the next position. Took me 2 years to get to the position above that. Finally, I'm at the peak of this profession, and I don't even know how or why I am here. I feel like I'm not doing anything different than I did the day I first got here.
It's that identity crisis you hit.
Hmm.
In fact, there's a new crisis that they've dubbed the quarter life crisis, which,
Yeah.
funny enough, is a take on the half life crisis, which the midlife crisis, sorry, which is 75%. This is a LinkedIn study which is quoted 75% of young adults actually go through this crisis where they realize everything that they've been doing, they have no idea why they've been doing it, and it's almost as if most of our choices and decisions are binary, or we have no option. It's like it's made for us because if I kind of look at the people around me and I question how many people would think of should I go to college or university or should I then go into that corporate role, it's almost as if it's just the thing you do. You don't question it, you just go and do it. And it's kind of like if you're not consciously thinking about your decisions and your choices, you don't know if they're really going to make you happy. Do you kind of see that around you as well, especially kind of in a city like New York where everything is so fast paced? Do you feel like people really question what they're doing?
That's a great question. It's hard to generalize. I don't like to generalize people as a group. I don't even love the term millennial. I think that people have their own identities. Um, but since you did ask, I mean, I would say, on the whole, being in New York, there is a certain level of intensity that may bring out the desire to just succeed financially, I'd say, in this sort of atmosphere. But then again, I don't really have anything to compare it to. So I've only been in Chicago otherwise, and I was in school then, I wasn't working. So that's a tough question. I don't want to give you any false implications or wrong answers. So I'll leave it at
Of
that.
course, yeah. So, in terms of when it comes to, I'll take you to education, right? Let's go back to high school,
Hmm.
tertiary education, where
Yeah.
a lot of people that I've kind of been around in those scenarios, it's like you said, these life experiences of education, being in an institution, it kind of completely it consumes your entire lifespan.
Hmm.
The amount of people that I know that really pursued stuff outside of education, trying to develop themselves in other ways, it's not so much as you do a couple of hours here and there
Hmm.
if you get the chance. But I think what ends up happening is it turns you into somebody where kind of the excuse is that I don't have time to pursue other things because
Hmm.
this is my sole focus. And what ends up happening is we miss out on so many other opportunities, amazing opportunities that we might find passion or fulfillment in.
Right.
We might find something else in it, another path which is just as viable, which could be feasible and we could love doing. Um, how important is it for us to kind of take on these opportunities and not kind of get lazy and comfortable in
Yeah.
what we're doing on a day to day basis?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I took a class my my sophomore year. I was probably 15 years old, and it was the hardest class I've ever taken, probably to this day. It was called AP European History, or AP Euro is what we called it. And AP Euro, just AP Euro, I probably did about 2 hours of work a night. I had many, many exams throughout the year. I had rigorous essays, DBQ, document based question essays, all leading up to this advanced placement exam where you can get college credit for the course that you took if you scored a 4 or a 5 on the exam. So essentially, what we did every day in that class was get assigned a ton of reading and a ton of questions based on the reading. And we come into the class and we talk about the reading, and our teacher, Mr. Sassone, would pepper us with questions about the reading. And basically, if we didn't get the questions right, it indicated two things. One, that we embarrassed ourselves in front of the rest of the class, and two, that we probably weren't going to pass this exam and get the college credit that we wanted to because we were taking the course. So
Okay.
this was the routine. About 2 weeks before this huge exam, we walked into the classroom and Mr. Sassone greeted us with uh, toy basketball hoops and balls, like magnetic darts and dartboards, tennis balls, like pretend hockey sticks, and he announced that we were going to participate in the SAS Olympics. And instead of
Okay.
studying AP Euro, we had a day in which we literally shoved the history textbooks to the side and just lived in the moment and had fun. And I'll tell you, the next day we got into class and went back to AP Euro. The vibe in that classroom, the engagement, the intensity, the desire for students to succeed and participate was so much higher than any other period of that entire school year. So, in regard to your question, breaking free from the norm is not just something that you should do if you feel like things are becoming stale. It's really something you have to do in order to stay motivated, stay energized, and stay more or less excited for the rest, like pretty much the rest of your life.
I think yeah, it acts. A lot of people use that the term, go on a vacation, get away from work for a bit, and it's more of like a cure perspective where when you start getting stressed out from work, you take some time away. But the reality of it is should be used more as a preventative in the sense that you take some time. I think I've personally experienced exactly what you're talking about, where especially working on Stryve recently, it's like you get so consumed by that on a daily basis, it almost becomes your entire life to the point where you you don't see much outside of that. And when you start losing these other things, you start losing your sanity to an extent,
Yeah.
and you feel like your whole life is this. You can't, time with the family maybe takes a step back. Time spending doing your hobbies takes a step back, and having these regular moments where you kind of take a step back, unwind, do something completely different. It just brings that motivation. It brings that intensity back to when you are back on that, I guess, that job or that course that you're on, or if you've got an exam or something like that. And I think it seems counterproductive if things are building up to take time away. But if anything, it's kind of you take a few hours, you take a day away, but you come back much stronger, and everything after that becomes way more productive.
Yes, definitely. And I do think the way that you can sort of prevent that one moment where you just decide, hey, I need to get away, is to proactively focus on something that you love to do every single day. And that's where getting comfy comes in, the morning routine that I created in order to overcome that stress and anxiety of, oh, does my life have any purpose? And focus on yourself for however long. And my recommendation is to do that in the morning so that the rest of your day could be focused on other people.
So I want to leave you with one. I want to leave with the audience with one piece of advice which you can give. Now it's going to be quite a loaded question,
Mhm.
but I want you to pass on the one biggest teaching or experience that you've had that has taught you something that has benefited you more than anything else. What's the biggest piece of wisdom you can pass on to the youth of today?
Yeah. So the one thing that always comes to my mind when I get asked this question is in regard to, should I continue pursuing what I want to pursue, or should I go back to checking boxes? I think that's been the majority of our conversation. I think it would be helpful to provide some advice on this for other people. So a couple months ago, I was thinking about applying for quote unquote normal jobs again. And I went on a morning run with this guy named Peter Shankman. He's a multi-millionaire. He started this super popular company called Help a Reporter Out. He's a best-selling author. He's got a top podcast where he talks to all the best people in the world. And we went on a morning run through Central Park. And as we're running, we were talking, and I brought up this, do you think I should do what I'm doing and just sort of forget the stability of having a job and things like that? Or do you think I should have a job and do all of this on the side? And he said to me, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. He said to me, do people love you? I said, yes, of course. He said, do people support you? I said, yes, definitely. And then he said, are you hungry? And he was talking about food. He didn't mean like intensity of are you hungry to succeed. He
Yeah.
said, are you hungry? And I said, no. So he says, so why the F would you stop putting the passion and perseverance and intensity into what you're doing now? And that was the kind of moment where it was just like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be homeless. And until I get to that point, I'm going to do everything I possibly can within my power to succeed on my ultimate goals. So it's about that, that concept of grit, right? So grit is the long-term desire to to set a goal and do whatever it takes in order to attain it. And it's not certain how one gets there, but just having that mindset of I'm going to do it is enough. So, if you're at that tipping point of should I go out on my own or should I do this and do something else on the side, be logical about it, but just know that you're not going to be able to give everything you can on the one thing that you desire the most if there is, something else impeding that desire.
Brilliant. I think that's a great piece of advice that everyone can kind of learn from. Until there's physically something that's stopping you from pursuing your passion, just keep at it and don't stop, I guess. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been absolutely great talking to you.
You too, Sean. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Join Jordan's email list to surround yourself all things leadership, motivation, and productivity. Receive articles, interviews, podcasts, sample routines, and books. Become the best version of you for yourself and those around you. The link will be in the description. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Follow us on social media and be sure to subscribe and stay updated on our weekly podcast where you can get life-changing advice from experts in all walks of life to unlock your mind.